Here is your latest African news. Your news highlights. Africa-wide. 7 more African countries look to join South Africa in nuclear power production. DRC. UN peacekeeping force Monusco leaves Butembo base after losing public support. South Africa. South Africa faces shutdown amid nationwide strike. Nigeria. US to return $23 million loot of Nigerian ex-military ruler. Uganda. Uganda to provide free Wi-Fi hotspots countrywide. Rwanda. Government regains control of upper airspace after 30 years. Diaspora. Haitians launch protest demands outset of president. Diaspora. Brazil vote executives under scrutiny after coup charter. Africa-wide. 7 more African countries look to join South Africa in nuclear power production. At least 7 African countries are at various stages of commissioning, shopping for vendors and mapping appropriate sites in the rollout of nuclear power plants as a majority eye 2030 as a start date for generating electricity from nuclear energy. Egypt, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Morocco, Nigeria and Uganda are planning on moving towards nuclear energy soon. Egypt is currently the only country to have begun construction following the formal launch of a site in July. Kenya is also inching closer to the development stage after identifying 2 coastal sites, Kilifi and Kwale, earlier this year to put up the country's first nuclear power generator. Uganda is also considering 3 sites in the Kyonga, Kagera and Aswa rivers of the construction of 2 1,000-megawatt reactors by 2031. Nigerian Nuclear Regulator Agency opened bidding for construction of a 4-gigawatt nuclear plant in March 2022, and the country is reportedly betting on the 4-reactor power plant with an equivalent of a third of the country's total installed capacity to address power outages. In June, Morocco advanced its plan for nuclear energy after the release of a report that gives its legislators recommendations for making a switch to renewable energy sources. After the discovery of uranium deposits 4 years ago, Tanzania is also looking for help from Rosatom and its subsidiary Uranium One, which has a license to mine uranium in the Mkuju River within the Selous Game Reserve. Rwanda is also making significant strides after signing a deal with Rosatom to build a center of nuclear science and technologies by October 2029. DRC. UN peacekeeping force Monusco leaves Butembo base after losing public support. The United Nations peacekeeping force in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Monusco, is evacuating its base in the eastern town of Butembo. Local civil society actors say they feel a sense of satisfaction and congratulate the population who mobilized as one to demand the unconditional withdrawal of the contingent. Anger has been fueled by perceptions that Monusco is failing to do enough to stop decades of armed conflict, with more than 120 militias operating in the DRC's troubled east. UN bases in eastern DRC were assailed last month by protesters angered at Monusco's perceived failure to provide security. Deadly clashes broke out on August 23rd between DR Congo troops and an armed group at an empty UN base in the country's troubled east, officials have said. 2 attackers were killed and 4 captured when the group struck the site in the city of Butembo. The UN peacekeeping force in the DRC had moved its troops out of the base following violent protests in late July. 32 demonstrators and 4 UN troops died over the course of a week-long disturbance, according to a Congolese toll. An estimated 120 armed groups roam eastern DRC, many of them a legacy of 2 regional wars that flared in the last decade of the 20th century. Among the most notorious are the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, which the self-described Islamic State claims as its regional affiliate, and the M23, whose resurgence has sparked a diplomatic row between the DRC and neighboring Rwanda. On August 17th, the DRC authorities said Monusco had already left Butembo and that any remaining equipment in the city would be moved out. But Monusco then insisted that it was not leaving Butembo but momentarily suspending its operations. The city authorities published what they called a timetable for Monusco's planned deployment in Butembo, with traffic movements scheduled from August 20th to 24th. South Africa. South Africa faces shutdown amid nationwide strike. Thousands of people across South Africa are taking part in a national strike in protest at the rising cost of living. Two of the country's largest unions are leading the strike, calling for a total shutdown of the economy in protest against high unemployment levels and rising fuel and electricity costs. Marches are expected in all provinces, with the largest rallies likely to be in Cape Town and Pretoria. The unions want a government cap on fuel prices as well as a drop in interest rates and an income grant. Around a third of South Africans are unemployed, and the country is grappling with the economic impact of global events such as COVID and the war in Ukraine. While organizers of August 24th action say they aim to bring the country to an economic halt, they also acknowledge that numbers on the streets may not match similar shutdowns in previous years. The government says a no work, no pay principle will apply and essential workers cannot take part. But unions say they see this as a stage of a series of actions they're willing to undertake until they get results. Nigeria. US to return $23 million loot of Nigerian ex-military ruler. The United States government has signed an agreement with the federal government to repatriate $23 million Abacha loot to Nigeria. The loot was stolen by the last General Sani Abacha and his cronies, who ruled as the military head of state of Nigeria from 1993 until his death in 1998. He seized power on 17 November 1993 in the last successful coup d'etat in the military history of Nigeria. The agreement was signed on August 23rd at the office of Abubakar Malami, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, AGF. In his speech, Malami said the decision to return the stolen funds, which is tagged Abacha 5, was a product of a series of negotiations and meetings between Nigeria, the US Department of Justice, and the United Kingdom UK National Crime Agency. The US ambassador noted that the funds would be used to complete infrastructural projects earlier mentioned by the AGF. She also added that the $311.7 million previously seized and repatriated will be transformed into a visible and impactful representation of the possibilities of government assets that directly improve the lives of average Nigerians. Uganda. Uganda to provide free Wi-Fi hotspots countrywide. Government will install 2,000 Wi-Fi hotspots across Uganda in a move that will extend internet access in far-flung areas. Speaking during the final review of the Regional Communications Infrastructure Program that started in 2016 and ends this year in Uganda, Dr. Hatwib Mugasa, the National Information Technology Authority Executive Director, said this is part of the Uganda Digital Acceleration Program that is awaiting cabinet approval. The free Wi-Fi hotspots installation program will be rolled out in every location where the government's national backbone infrastructure exists. Government has so far installed 600 Wi-Fi hotspots, with 300 of these situated in regional cities and another 300 in Kampala. The $75 million Regional Communications Infrastructure Program, funded by the World Bank, has registered significant gains, with the government's plan to extend Wi-Fi across the country based on extension of the geographic reach of broadband connectivity across the country. The project has contributed to the extension of 764 kilometers of optical fiber cable added onto the government's national backbone infrastructure. Rwanda. Government regains control of upper airspace after 30 years. Rwanda will now have full control over her upper aerial space, nearly 5 decades in the hands of the government of Tanzania. A handover deed was signed last week by both governments after Rwanda notified of her intention to withdraw and directly discharge her responsibility of providing air traffic services in her upper airspace. According to Rwanda Civil Aviation Authority (RCCA), the country's upper airspace was delegated to Tanzania in 1973 for provision of air traffic services. However, Tanzanian officials said to be able to regain her airspace, Rwanda fronted different reasons, including improving safety in Kigali Flight Information Region (FIR), as well as meeting regulatory requirements such as search and rescue (SAR) obligations. Eventually, following several coordination meetings led by the International Civil Aviation Organization (ICAO), Rwanda was permitted to continue with the process to take over the airspace. Haiti. Haitians launch protest demands outset of president. Thousands of protesters in Haiti's capital and other major cities blocked roads, shut down businesses, and marched through the streets on August 24th to demand that Prime Minister Ariel Henry step down and call for a better quality of life. Violence and kidnappings had surged in Port-au-Prince and nearby areas in recent months, with warring gangs killing hundreds of civilians in their fight over territory. Violence has grown ever more powerful since last year's assassination of President Jovenel. In one protest, people wore black t-shirts, while at another they wore red t-shirts emblazoned with the words "Rise Up." The protest came days after dozens of demonstrators staged a sit-in in front of Henry's official residence and demanded that he resign. On August 22nd, police clashed with demonstrators in some areas, firing tear gas to break up the crowd as burning tires blocked roads. Brazil. Brazil vote, executives under scrutiny after coup chatter. Weeks ahead of Brazil's presidential election, police carried out search warrants on August 23rd, targeting several business leaders who allegedly participated in a private chat group that included comments favoring a possible coup and military involvement in politics. The search and seizure warrants were issued by a Supreme Court justice who heads the nation's electoral authority, according to a statement from the federal police. They were aimed at prominent supporters of President Jair Bolsonaro, according to two of the people whose properties were searched and an official with knowledge of the operation. Many of the comments were speculative and appeared to reflect personal opinion rather than a coordinated effort to undermine Brazilian democracy. However, they fed into the national jitters over whether Bolsonaro's unsubstantiated allegations that the electoral system is vulnerable to fraud were laying the groundwork for a power grab if the vote doesn't go his way. According to the official with knowledge of the searches, the warrants targeted 8 businessmen who appeared in a story last week on the online news site Metropolis, which published screenshots from their chat group on the WhatsApp messaging app. The person spoke on condition of anonymity because he wasn't authorized to speak publicly. In addition to issuing the search warrants, Justice Alexandre de Moraes ordered the businessmen's social media accounts to be blocked and their bank accounts frozen, the online site G1 reported. De Moraes also lifted seals on their banking records and authorized federal police to take depositions from the executives, the site reported. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us. And remember, Africa is watching.